But I'm gonna hit record and just see what happens. So just so everybody knows, you're being recorded. This is a safe
I'd say
space.
recording.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah, we
That's
can see it as well.
perfect. Yeah, so Steph, if all else fails, I'll just chat with you at work and make it work. Hopefully you have some connection. But yeah, no pressure, Trace, but this is Tracy, and she is going to be probably joining us on a lot or most of our group runs. So I just wanted to introduce you to her.
So I told Natalie I made some notes because I've been doing lots of this at my job. So kind of get sort of prepared for it. So yeah, Natalie had posted that she was looking for some help, and I volunteered to come and help with some runs. And as well, I thought I'd kind of share my running journey a little bit with you. So I didn't start running until I was almost 36. So if you think you're too old to start, I don't think you ever are. And I actually did a learn to run clinic in Cold Lake, very much with like what Natalie's doing with you. And I think you're all really fortunate to have Natalie take you through this journey because she's very positive, knowledgeable, and lots of fun. So she'll be very good at helping you with that. I did my first 5K on Mother's Day in 2006, and it was quite overwhelming. So I think the hardest part is going to be from becoming a non-runner to running 5K. I think going from 5 to 10 and 10 to a half isn't such a big struggle, but it's going from being a non-runner to 5. So, but you've got to stick with it. You've got to start there. So, and that same year, I also did a 10K and a 5-miler that fall. And then the next year I did my first half marathon. And I did all of that with only a watch. I didn't have any technology because there wasn't smartphones or anything. So it's great we have that technology, but you don't need it to become a runner. I think my best part of sort of the whole running culture is the doing team or group things. So I used to do some mini triathlons with coworkers when I lived in Cold Lake, which was lots of fun. I got to do the running. I also participated in the Kananaskis 100-mile relay race. I think I did that in 2011, which was lots of fun. You run from Longview in the mountains all the way to Kananaskis. It's just fun. Iron Horse Mini is probably the absolutely best sort of thing to do. I did it with some coworkers a few years ago, and it was lots of fun. It's doable distances and fun. And then the Iron Horse Ultra as well is a good event too. It's just longer distances. I've also done the 5 Peaks series twice, the Northern Alberta one, and it's a lot of fun too, especially if you're interested in trail races, and it's very family friendly. So I think everybody's fear of doing a race is that you're going to be the last runner. And I did do a race once where I was the last runner and everyone was waiting for me to finish. It was at Arm Lake, and it was when that race was quite small and I was the last runner, but somebody has to be last. So sometimes that can happen to you. I think everyone is registered for doing Natalie's workshop is also registered for the 5K, and that's a really good thing because it encourages you to run more and longer distances and get out and do that. So good for you for doing that. I'm not sure how I feel about virtual races. I don't know if any of the other runners will do that, but I miss the excitement of an actual race. So hopefully the Bison Dash will be able to be an actual race, because I think for your first one, it's good. I did a virtual race. I did the Bison race, and then I just did the virtual Navy run yesterday, and it's just not the same without that race environment. But that's all that we can do right now. So yeah, so I'm going to come out and help with the runs because it's always good to have some other people out there. So yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Thanks, Tracy. I don't know, Shane, do you feel up for a quick intro to the group? Because he's a very avid runner and frankly a huge inspiration to the community and the running community. So Shane.
Oh. You I think I recognize a lot of the names, at least from various Wainwright races we've had and some of our Facebook pages and clubs. So it's nice to see such a great turnout for what I think you have, 20 people signed up. So 21. It's great. 21.
Yeah, so pumped.
I hope we're live for that race, because I designed the race. And it's a great 5K, and some of my favorite part of running in Wainwright. I mean, it's Bevins and some of the outside parts of the green spaces is great. So it's nice to see people on that course, people training hopefully on that course, maybe some group runs. So it's great to see. I guess my history, so not to scare everyone, but I started too with a 5K, the old DOAC Spring Fling in 2010. So it can go pretty quick. Within a few years, yeah, I was running 100 milers, Ironman, and my longest race is 240 miles in Moab. So be careful, it is addiction sometimes. It's a good addiction at times. Running is definitely good for the soul and the mind. I'm probably a little different than Tracy at times. I like the solo long runs. I like the time to myself and my mind. So you'll see me probably running around town, sometimes out of town and such like that. I still love a group run. I definitely, sometimes they can be the most enjoyable. So I like a combo. And even running styles, there's a whole bunch as you get into running. Everyone thinks it's all the same, but it is quite different. Road running, like we have at the Dash, is different than, like Tracy was saying, with Arm Lake and the trail racing, and that they both have their goods, their pros and cons. I also do race some triathlons, and that running style is different as well. So it's a big sport if you want to get involved in it. I think it's a pretty good community in Wainwright, and we can definitely support each other from whichever level. I think it's great to see someone new on the trail to stop and run and talk to someone. We're pretty run friendly with our trail system with Bison Dash or Bison Run Route, the Ascot Trail. It's a nice place that you can run, walk. You can run on gravel if you want, pavement, have a bike, have a stroller, have your dog, whatever it is. So there's some good places to run. I know Tracy's been posting on, I'm not sure the Facebook page, maybe she can clear it. I think it's PSP Wainwright, but a lot of the little local runs, I just saw it yesterday, I think, and it was neat to see the little loops around the area that probably a lot of people don't know. So I think there's a really good bunch of resources in this group. So welcome to the addiction.
Thanks. Perfect. That's awesome. So those are just some of the familiar faces. We get to know each other quite a bit as we go through. But I think I'm going to share my screen. I do want to go through the manual. Did everybody get a chance? I know I sent it to everybody, but I know I sent a few via snail mail. So did those people get it? If you could put a thumbs up so I know. Okay, perfect. Woo, okay, good. So I'm gonna just share my screen regardless, so then we could all kind of follow along. Just let me know if you can't see anything, or if things change. This is all new to me too, so I'm working out the kinks as I go. Okay, the training program. So I'm not gonna read this off to you. You have the resources with you. I just feel like we'll be here forever. But I do want to talk about the program itself. So I did design it to be 12 weeks long. And one of the reasons for that is a lot of the programs that are out there, there's a few really great ones. There is the Couch to 5K app, I believe. That's one of the better ones. It's only 9 weeks. But as an exercise physiologist, when we're looking at designing programs, we really want to focus not on increasing more than 10% in either volume or intensity each week. And there's just some programs that are out there, some weeks that are increased by 25%, some are 20%. I think the Nike one, there was one that somebody sent me, there was 1 week that went up to like 420% 1 week, just insane. So I wanted to just scrap that, make a program from scratch that increases every week. You do have a little bit of an active recovery week or a week with a little bit less here and there. And that's purposely designed to get your body used to the load. It is a high impact activity, so we have to keep that in mind. I don't want you doing, if you've done nothing at all, I don't want you to run 6 days a week. I don't even run 6 days a week. It's pretty hard on the body, so we need to take that time off. And what I do suggest, because it is, I put it for 3 days a week, taking at least a day off in between. Let your body heal. I do want to run for our groups at Bevins, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but I want to do workout 2, any of the runs 2, every week. So we'll do that together. So I do want you guys to trial out run number 1 first on your own. Then when we come to our group, we could maybe talk about what things came up. What did you notice in your body? Maybe you pushed it too hard on your intervals. Maybe you got to run slower. And just kind of work out some of those kinks, trying out the warm-ups on your own, the cool down. What did that feel like? Did you do it properly? So I do want you to do the very, very first run on your own first. I'd suggest maybe on Sunday or Monday, because then it'll give you that Tuesday off, and then we'll meet at Bevins on Wednesday evenings at 7 o'clock. If that works for your schedule. I know some of you are out of town or it doesn't work with you in your life. It's literally the only hour time slot I have in my life with all my jobs and everything. So I hope it works for most of you. But that's kind of the plan that I'm going for. We're always going to do our group runs, which is going to be run 2, take another day or 2 off, and then maybe run 3 on like a Friday or Saturday. And then you'll always just kind of do that every other day or every other day. So that's a bit about this. You'll notice it's a slow increment. So the first, we always start with a warm up, 5-minute warm up, and we'll do our dynamic stretching. Then we'll do our intervals. Some people I know like to have apps talk to them and tell them when to switch. I just look at my watch. There's so many ways of kind of going through that. I know somebody told me that there's an interval timer app that you could manually enter, you know, run 30 seconds, walk 3 minutes, or run 1 minute, walk 2 minutes, and you can set it up and then it just tells you. I don't know what app that is, but I'm sure if you just search interval app, you might be able to find something if you're kind of looking for that external cue. But I just look at the watch, I look at the phone, whatever it may be. So this is just going to be the training program. For those of you who are doing it as a walking program, because I know a few of you are doing it as a walking program, you could substitute run for just faster walking. So we're learning to increase our speed, increase our pace of our walk, followed by slower walking. So we could use that as an interval. And then for those of you who are running and already have a base and already could do 5K, 10K plus, you could kind of use this as little interval training or speed training, where you focus on running zone 4, zone 5 for your intervals and then slowing down for your recovery. You could do a slow jog or a walk. So we can manipulate this program quite a bit. Somebody with a more active history may be able to start later in the program. They might be able to start on week 4, week 5, so on. But if you're true, you know, I haven't done anything or haven't done a lot in 6 months, a year, more than that ever, start from week 1. And I want you to really, really listen to your body. If, let's say you're at week 5 and then you start to develop maybe things like shin splints, or you start noticing those kind of things, I don't want you to move on until that pain subsides. So we could always stick to with 1 week for 3 weeks in a row if we really want to. You'll still be able to do the 5K at the end. But I really want you to start just using this as a guide, not looking at this like a Bible, you have to do this. Just listen to your body, adapt as you need to, but these are just suggestions, okay? So this I put in your manuals. For those of you who do have any kind of heart rate monitor, my watch, I use a Garmin, mine is built in. I strongly suggest it just for optimal training. You definitely don't need one though. If you have one, let's use it. So what I do want you to do, if you do have a heart rate monitor and you do want to use it for the program, if you could email me your resting heart rate, that's all I need. And then I will personally give you your individualized training zones, because what's going to be given to one person is going to look exact or completely different to another person. It depends on your age, depends on a lot of factors that are in there. If you're on any heart medications or anything like that, let me know, because some will impact your heart rate during training. So I can give you individualized training zones to work with. So when we're learning, if you're a true couch to 5K, we don't really need to work more than zone 1, zone 2. We ideally want to stay in zone 2. So I'll talk about that a little bit later when I get into the science, because I'm a big science nerd, but the reason why. And so zone 2 is actually pretty easy. So you should still be able to talk. You might huff and puff a little bit. One of the reasons why I really love long runs and transitioning into longer running is because you don't feel like you're dying. You get to keep your heart rate low most of the time. And even the most conditioned athletes, Olympians, things like that, we spend 80% of our training in zone 2. So keeping that in mind, zone 2 is kind of that magic zone. And I'll talk about that further. So if you guys have a heart rate monitor, send me or just email me, text me your resting heart rate, and then I'll give you your zones and you can write them in your manual. Okay. I'm not going to get into all this or read this out, but it's about kind of getting started, making the time for yourself. I personally, because my life is a gong show, I have to schedule it in like it's a meeting, like it's a job itself. So today, even right after I said, oh, you know, I have between 5:30 and 6:15 because I still have to eat, and then I got to hop on here. I'm like, that's the run I'm going to do. I have to do it in that time because right after this, I'm teaching English till 1 a.m. So fitting it into your life, kind of scheduling it into your life is a really, really great tool, especially when you're starting out. And then this is assessing your readiness too. This is just from a safety standpoint because it is a high impact activity. And while I'm out there, I am allowed to work with cardiac patients, pulmonary patients, fresh heart attacks, but I don't want to wear that hat when I'm out there because then I have to do a full evaluation and I'm not always going to be there. So I have to break it down that if you answered yes to any of these questions, we do recommend that you get medical clearance. And this is also outlined in the waiver too, when you signed up for it. You could always make this, even if you do answer yes, I could still prescribe walking to anybody without knowing any medical history. So also know that you can make this a walking program also safely just because it is low impact. Okay, but staying in zone 2, that's where we're gonna have much, much less risk. So this is just kind of assessing your readiness, where you're at. And then kind of like I mentioned before, we can make that program your own, really make it, if it's a walking program, if it's a running program, if it's a couch to 5K walk run, we could make it your own and going through. And what I can't stress enough is slow and steady really, really does win the race. Learning how to pace yourself, because I guarantee a lot of you will probably be pushing it a little bit too hard on the actual run intervals. Slow down, and when you think you can't go any slower, you can go probably a little bit slower. And then always listen to your body and pause the program at any sign of injury. Commonly, a thing we'll see is some knee pain or shin splints. Classic overuse injuries. I put some common injuries at the end of the manual, and I really have to apologize because for some reason it printed off on the last few things, starting at stress fractures or Achilles tendinopathy. The titles didn't go in the right spot and I printed 20 copies. So with my OCD, I apologize if it's not straight, but you can always white out and just write it at the top. But always listen to your sign of injury and feel free to look through the guides. Message me being, hey, you know what? I have this happening. What should I do? I looked at my guide. It said to rest up. What do I do next? When can I start running again? So keep me in the loop with things. We're here to guide you through. We don't want to make this painful for you. We want you to have an actual enjoyable experience with it. Stretching, 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 stretching. So what I always tell my patients when I'm with them at the gym is our muscles, I like to think of them as taffy. So if taffy's cold and then you go and stretch them, what happens? The taffy just kind of snaps, right? But then I used to get in trouble for this. If you play around with it in your hands, you know, you stretch it out a little bit, it gets nice and stretchy and rubbery. And our muscles are similar in that sense. And we want to make sure our muscles are nice and warm before we go doing high impact activity, especially. So these are some of the stretches that we'll do before a run. Ideally, you do want to walk a little bit first, get some blood flow in your muscles, and then do this. Personally, I run from home, so what I usually do is I run up and down the stairs quite a few times, get my heart rate up, get my blood flowing, dance around sometimes, and then I'll do my stretching in my lobby before I go out for a run. So these are just guides. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. I might switch it up based on, because for the leg swings, for example, I like to hold on to something. If there's no tree or something to hang on to, there's no pressure. We could still do lots of other kinds of stretching, but we just really want to make sure that our main muscles are warmed up before, so we don't injure ourselves, so we don't hurt ourselves in the process and get set back. So there's a few guides here. So I do want you to try this on your own before, on your very, very first run. If something hurts, any stabbing joint pain, that's not what we're looking for, so feel free to skip it. But these are just some suggestions on warming up a lot of the hip flexors, hip extensors, abductors, adductors, and just getting your body ready for the impact. And then after the run, I know a lot of people are guilty of not stretching, but it's actually quite harsh on your posterior chain. And what we see a lot with runners is a really, really tight back end. So their glutes are tight, their hamstrings are tight, their hip flexors are even tight. And we really, really need to focus on keeping them stretched, not only to reduce our chance of injury, but to make it more enjoyable, less painful, preventing a lot of back pain. So these, again, are just some suggestions to do. And these ones are the ones that you're warm at this point. Your muscles are warm. And so you hold these for at least typically 30 seconds. It takes the muscle spindles to relax. I put different varying levels of certain exercises. It's not a one size fits all. Just some common ones that I really enjoy. Not really enjoy, but need to do sometimes, like pigeon right here is my nemesis. But it's a fantastic stretch and just keeping everything mobile. So try those out after your run. And then we have our not so fun side effects of running. And I do want you to kind of put away the idea, if you do have any kind of sharp stabbing, exacerbating pain, that's not what we're looking for. But if you have, you know, that delayed onset muscle soreness in the exercise world, we call it the DOMS. If you have that muscle soreness, it's like, oh, I haven't used that muscle in a while, I'm feeling it. It's, no, stairs are a little tough, or sitting on the toilet might be a little tough. That's super normal, especially when you're not used to doing something. And this usually happens either the day after or the day after that. So it's when we're progressively overloading our muscles. And as we're doing that, it sounds horrible, but we're actually creating little micro tears in the muscles. But our bodies are really, really good for putting things back together and healing. And so that's one of the reasons why I do want you to take that day off in between too, because we need to allow those little micro tears to heal. And that's how our body actually adapts and gets stronger. So we have to overload our muscles to a point, but not to the point where we're destroying it. So it's kind of like finding that fine line. I always tell my patients, if you're sore for 5 days or more, that just means we did a little bit too much. Do a little bit less next time, adjust the load, adjust the intensity next time, or even slowing down the speed will help sometimes. So that's the common one, the DOMS, you might feel. Best thing to do for that though is go for a walk, Maybe do a little light cycling, keep the moving going. Okay, it's gonna help. Some yoga, we got our yoga studio opening back up in July, which is really exciting. So I'm excited to be back there, but really good to just help with that healing process. Skin chafing, you might notice you have chafing in weird areas. I use this. I don't know if Tracy or Shade or any of you use something else. It's just a anti-chafing balm that I get at Running Room or Sport Check. I used to use like coconut oil and things like that, but I find it stains the clothes, or a lot of oil-based stuff or Vaseline stains the clothes. So this one I like more because it doesn't damage my expensive clothing and it works
And
well.
it's cheap, like I think it's $10 and it lasts forever.
Yeah, so long. Like I've had this for over a year. And you'll notice common areas, like I always kind of go like right near my armpit, just on my one side chafes a lot more. I don't know why, but you're gonna notice those things. So if you feel like you do chafe, feel free to find a chafing balm or use some oil, just keep it moisturized there. Blisters, using blister packs, sometimes it's just a matter of changing the shoe or changing the way you tie your shoe. Different types of shoes, making sure it's fitted properly. They're not fun. They're not nice. Black toenails. I've had this once. I think it's like the badge of honor in the long distance running world. I know, Shane, you have your fair collection. But it's probably not something you're going to experience though within a 5K, but if you start increasing your distances, you might end up losing a toenail, getting a blood blister under the toenail. And typically we could fix a lot of that with shoes, but if you're doing a lot of downhill stuff, you'll get that constant friction on there, which could develop that blood blister. So sometimes going up a shoe size helps with that, or getting a shoe with a wider toe bed. So you can actually change the laces up to make sure your feet are snug, but you have extra room in your toe bed. Muscle cramping, if you ever get those calf cramps or any leg cramps, things like that, a lot of the time it tends to be an electrolyte imbalance. So making sure you're fueling properly or being hydrated or just having the right combination of the two. Sometimes we could overhydrate and we start to lose those electrolytes. But a lot of the time it's either not enough. Especially in the summer months, you might be sweating a lot more and you might be losing a little bit more. Typically, we don't really worry about fueling within, like if the activity is less than an hour, we don't really worry too much about that. That comes in if we're starting to increase our distances and doing longer activities. We need to look at that fueling a bit more. Gas, burping, flatulence, runner's trots. Sometimes things get moving. And one of the reasons, I also have IBS, this is great, but one of the reasons why I do want to run this at Bevins is because there is a convenient porta potty if you run into trouble by the kids' park around the corner. So if you do get things moving, you're going to realize I've learned over the years foods that agree with me and not agree with me before a run or after a run. So it's a lot of just trial and error with what's going to work for you. But yeah, so there's just some things here: lacking motivation, anxiety about running in public. I know I had this a lot earlier on. Oh, people are going to look at me. They're going to make fun of me. Oh, I'm going to look silly when I run. I'm too big to run. Whatever it is, just know that we're all in this together. We're all learning at the same pace. Everybody's thinking about the same thing of yourself, but I can guarantee you probably you're not saying those things about the other person. You're only thinking about that internally. So keeping that in mind and knowing that we're all in there together. And I highlighted at the bottom here, remember, no matter how slow you are, you're still lapping everybody on the couch. So you're still out there and you're still moving. And that's what we want. We just want people moving and enjoying movement in their bodies. Few keeping safe. Try not to wear, there's going to be quite a bit of us if we're out there. So try not to wear headphones in both ears. I actually I'm obsessed with these now. They're the bone conducting headphones. super great. They hook over the ear so they don't actually go in. So I could hear traffic, I could hear people around me, I could hear people's conversations in the gym. Super satisfying sometimes when you want to eavesdrop. But from a safety standpoint, it's really nice to hear if somebody's coming up behind you, or any cars or any bikes, because sometimes you could get really lost or lost in your mind, or you're talking with somebody, or you're talking on the phone. And it's just from that safety standpoint, you can't hear the person behind you yelling, "I'm gonna pass you," or "to your left." Okay, so something to think about. If you have little earbuds, if you're running with music, try to maybe just put one in, especially when we're all out there together, just so you could hear your surroundings a little bit better. If you're out on the road, wherever you are, run facing traffic. If there's no specific sidewalk or running path that way, you could deke if you need to. Dusk, morning, sometimes when it's a little bit dark, make sure you try to wear reflective clothing. I know for me, I'm like, people can see me, but I know there's been so many times when I'm driving and I feel like I've almost felt like I hit somebody I didn't hit somebody, but quite close to hitting somebody in the ditch that I just didn't even see, just that time of day. So if you know you're gonna run before dawn or when it starts to get a little darker, try to wear something a little bit more reflective, just so drivers could see you, and it's a little bit safer that way. Don't make sudden U-turns is a big one. I made this mistake one time. I was into my podcast when I'm running, and I just did an out and back, and I turned around and I almost got hit by a bike who was about to pass me, and that was when I was wearing my earbuds at the time. So just making sure, just like when you're driving, look behind you before you make a U-turn. So same kind of ideas and rules apply. Oops. And then I did want to go over running etiquette. So a while back, I asked our runners group just some pet peeves or things to think about when it comes to running etiquette, the unwritten rules. So I did want to put this in here. And I know right now, I think the track is opening up, but they're not allowing it for runners at this time. But when you're at the track, every track is a little bit different, but the one in town, there's 2 giant signs that tell you the direction. So depending on what day, if it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, I think you go clockwise. And then on the other days, you go counterclockwise. And it also tells you which is the slow lane and which is the fast lane. So I want you to think of it kind of like the traffic. So you always just kind of drive in the slow lane. If you go to pass somebody, you go in the faster lane and then you go back over. And I want you to think about this. If you're at the indoor track, I know I live there in the winter times doing my runs. And it's really frustrating when you're trying to pass somebody, but they're in the fast lane and you have to kind of keep deking through and you can't really maneuver around properly. So just try to follow the posted rules on the track. With COVID in mind, we have to think about that and social distancing right now as well. When we're out there in our group runs, being mindful of that. Try to stay 6 feet away unless you're from the same household. But try to run single file or max 2 side by side if you're from the same household. Try not to take up the whole track because somebody might be a little bit faster, maybe a bike, and there's other people out there who might want to pass you. So just try to stay on the right. Think of it like the road. Stay to the right so people could get around you. Because I know there's been many times where I'm running on the trails and there's 3, 4, 5 people taking up the whole thing and I'm yelling to your left and they can't hear me and I'm running off or falling down some things, try to get around them, or they jump the wrong way. So just keeping that in mind. And then just for consistency, just like driving, try to pass on the left. And so one of the things you could practice is literally yelling on your left. So then you know naturally to either shift to your right a little bit to allow that person to pass you. Okay. And then just be friendly and smile. We're all out there together. You might be passing people. It's always nice to give a little wave, a little smile to acknowledge that you're both out there having fun. And then I also put some tips for race day. So I did want to kind of go through these. If you feel like you have to slow down or rest, again, kind of move out to the side before you do so. And if you know that you're going to be on the slower side, start at the back of the group. The faster runners will usually be out front, kind of taking off. So then you could kind of find out where you're at in terms of running. If you're running with a pet or a stroller, try to stay at the back and also move over to the side to allow others to pass you. And then when you're done and you run through the finish line, try not to stop in front of the finish line too. Just keep running through, and then you can relax and get your congratulations and I guess virtual high fives at this point in time because we can't make contact yet. Yeah, and just pretty much allow people to know when you're coming up behind them. I know I've been spooked. It's kind of scary. That's why I switched my headphones over. Or if you have to squeeze through a little tight space. So just those are some of the unwritten rules, but it makes it a lot more pleasant and makes things a little bit more consistent when we're all out there. Okay. Is there any questions so far? I don't know if people want to jump in for a minute before I nerd out and talk some science. All right. We have a rule when I'm facilitating workshops, we call it wait till 8. So you have to wait for 8 seconds because people find the silence really awkward and somebody usually chimes in. So I waited till 8. And if you do have questions, again, write it down in the chat and I'll make sure to touch on that. But this part, running physiology, this is, I live, dream, sleep physiology. I love physiology. That's what I took all my degrees in. But really why I love heart rate training and heart rate variability is because everybody is so different. Everybody's heart rates are different. Their resting heart rate's different, maximal heart rate's different. And so we can really manipulate your training and really individualize it by giving you certain zones, given those factors. So your zone 1 would kind of be your recovery. This is where maybe you're doing your warm-ups, your cool downs, you're letting that heart rate come up slightly more than that base resting level, or when you're taking your walk recoveries on your intervals in the actual program. We kind of want to get to zone 1, let things slow down. But zone 2, this is the magic. This is the long, slow distance or LSD runs, not to be confused with the common hallucinogen, but we call it the LSD runs in the runner's world. And that's our long, slow distance run. So this is staying in our zone 2. 80% of our training should be in the zone 2 because so many benefits happen, so many physiological benefits happen here. But this is really where we build our base and build our foundation. So if you're going from 0 to a 5K, like a full couch to 5K, we need to build our foundation before we start doing things like speed intervals and things like that. Just like our house, we always have to build the foundation of our house before we embellish it, getting the bricks up there, putting up the drywall. So we want to really make sure we have a great foundation. I say once you could run consistently for 30 minutes or so in zone 2 comfortably, then we could work on speed training and working in those higher zones. But for now, when we're building the base, this is really where the magic happens. So you're building that basic endurance, you're building your aerobic capacity, so your body's ability to utilize oxygen. And so you actually become more efficient and you're able to work at this workload for a lot longer. Your body's utilizing it a lot better. For you biology folk, it increases our mitochondrial density and biogenesis. So in our cells, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You probably remember that from all your biology textbooks. But our mitochondria is where we get a lot of the energy. And so what happens when we're staying in zone 2, we actually increase the number of mitochondria that we have in our cells. And when we have more mitochondria, we have more energy. And then we have more energy stores, and then we could do things for a lot longer at that workload. So we're actually creating more mitochondria while staying here. Increased capillarization. So we actually build more capillaries in our bodies. Our bodies build little roadways, extra little vessels, and that helps our body utilize oxygen so much more by increasing our surface area in our body. And then increased fat oxidation. And what that pretty much means is that our bodies are able to utilize fat as a store a little bit more in the zone. And then we store, so sitting here right now, we're burning more fats than we are carbs. You're always burning a combination of fats and carbs. At a lower intensity, you're burning a significantly higher proportion of fats than you are carbohydrates. When we don't have as much oxygen, when we're working really hard and trying to get that oxygen in, we rely on our carbohydrate sources to kick in. And so that's where our glycogen stores come in. That's where, when we're working at a higher heart rate, we're working more on utilizing those carb sources. So in the zone 2, we're really improving our fat oxidation and how we're using fat as a source. Transforming muscle fiber types. So people generally have a body disposition strictly from their genetics. You could kind of think of those, tall, lanky kind of people. Then you have those naturally muscular people. And then you have people who are a little softer, a little rounder. And it's not necessarily if you are classified as overweight or you have extra meat, you're automatically in that. It's even if you were in a normal weight range, what your body shape will be. So we'll typically see more of like an apple shape for your kind of long, lanky kind of people. You'll see a lot more curve naturally happening, wider hips, wider shoulders for those other folk too. And what happens is in those body types, we tend to have a higher proportion of this type 2 muscle fiber. And those are really good for like sprinters. A lot of sprinters have a high proportion of type 2 muscle fibers. Those tall, long, lanky people have a lot of type 1 muscle fibers. So even if you have a lot of type 2 muscle fibers, by working in zone 2, you can actually convert a lot of those fibers to type 1. And when you have those type 1 or those slow twitch muscle fibers, we're able to improve our endurance and exercise economy so much more. I could talk all day about this. I love this stuff. So if you want to know more about the physiology, I won't go too much. But zone 2 is just the magic. That's where everything happens. If you don't have a heart rate monitor, that's okay. You're working at a pretty slow pace where you should still be able to talk a little bit in like brief sentences, but you'll still be huffing and puffing a little bit. Zone 3, you do get some benefits in zone 3, and I guarantee you most people tend to work here when they're doing their intervals when they're first starting out. So you still get some of those benefits, just not half as much as our zone 2. So again, if we really want to maximize our training and we really want to build the strongest foundation for our body, zone 2, zone 2, zone 2. I can't talk about that enough. Once you have that foundation, you can run for half an hour straight, no problem, keeping it steady. Then we can work on speed training and things like that, and that's going to improve our lactate threshold over time, so we're able to work at a higher intensity for a lot longer. And that's something that we can worry about later. For those of you who already have a running base and who want to make this program more of interval, doing speed runs, on your run portion, you could start to work in like zone 4, zone 5, and then get to a zone 1, zone 2 for your recovery aspect. So we can manipulate the program a little bit by playing with those heart rate zones. But yeah, so lots of benefits from each zone, all things happening in our body's physiology, but when we're building at base, zone 2 is, if you take anything away from today, it's zone 2. And so strength training, I did want to put this piece in because I find that this is a big part that's not included in a lot of running programs that are out there. And it's one of those things that if you do your strength training, if you stay strong, working on running specific, like a lot of things are in the glutes and the hips, but we also use our arms, our chest to power our runs as well too. So keeping a strong base, you're less likely to hurt yourself. You're going to improve your body's economy and how you run and your body's form and biomechanics when you run, which then reduces your chance of more injuries. And this is just something you could implement. Again, it's all in your book. There's no right way or wrong way to train. But what I did put here is some basic exercises for runners that doesn't take a lot of equipment at all, just some body weight stuff. Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines suggest for everybody, no matter what, to do strength training at least twice a week. And again, giving that day off or two in between. So if you can fit it in, it's going to really maximize it. You'll be stronger. You'll be able to run further with less chance of injury. So just some things to think about. Those are some exercises. You could YouTube things, not a big deal. Glute bridges are really, really great for strengthening our posterior chains, our lumbar area of our back, our hips, our hamstrings, which are going to be our big driving forces in our run. Single leg calf raises, because when we run, we land on one leg. So we want to help with that ankle stability quite a bit. So these single leg calf raises go a long way. Some basic push-ups. You don't have to do it from the ground. Countertops work fantastic. Sometimes if you have carpeted stairs, it works really good. If you start at a higher step and then work your way down, you can do push-ups from the wall. So I just gave some variety of options to pick from, just to maybe start to include it. I'm not going to check your homework. So this is all on you guys. If you really want to maximize your program, I'm here to help you. If you want to go over your form with some of these things, come to the group run. We could go over some of those form aspects and technique if you're worried that you're doing some things wrong. And then I put some core exercises in here too. I'm not a big fan of crunches. Research shows circa 2002 that it's actually quite detrimental to our spine, especially if we have a lot of issues. We see a lot of herniation of discs happening with chronic kind of crunches and sit-ups. So these are just some exercises that will help minimize that and actually strengthen that core from those deep intrinsic abdominal muscles, which will help stabilize us when we run and help improve our posture when we run and just our strength in general. Overtraining. Oh, yes. Who's chatting? Because I can't see on my screen. Or maybe it was off mute for a second.
That was me, sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Do you have a question?
No, I didn't mean to get you excited, sorry.
Okay, well, hey, I'm excited. I get it. It's a thing. Okay, so overtraining, definitely a thing. We see this. Depends on your personality type. I find you either get those people who just push, refuse to rest. They just need to do more. They need to do more. We see a lot with the typical type A runners. And then we have the opposite end of the spectrum. So it's just, I really want you to focus on listening to your body. If you follow the program to the T, chances are you likely won't overtrain because we're only increasing about 5 to 10% each week. But things to keep in mind, some signs of overtraining. Another reason why I love heart rate so much is sometimes you'll start to see that resting heart rate climb a little bit. And that's one of the tools that I use. I look at how is my resting heart rate over the last few days? Has it been going up? You know what? I think I need a rest day today. So little things like that. And this is, some people just might feel this all the time, some of these symptoms. It's just a change from your baseline. So looking at that, if you're injuring yourself a little bit more, excessive fatigue. Like if you're always fatigued, it's one thing, but I know there's some days where it's like you look at the stairs and you're like, I'm not going up there. So little things like that, loss of appetite, sometimes insomnia, restless sleep. Those are just little signs of overtraining, things to think about to just take a rest day, take a couple of rest days. A couple of days off isn't going to kill you. We actually get our benefits from those resting phases. And that's where actually we get our gains, as they call it. So we have to progressively overload, and then we need that rest and recovery. Okay, and we want to just prevent that overtraining. Shoes and clothing. They always say running, it doesn't cost a lot, but probably guarantee half of the runners here who have a history probably spend a lot of money on running things and chafing cream and the new hydration pack and compression socks. So you could make this an expensive sport. You could make this a much cheaper sport. So at the end of the day, you really do need a good pair of shoes. And it's not necessarily, you know, what you see most ads for, what your friend tells you is the best shoe. It's what shoe works for you. Some people have more flat feet who need a little bit more arch support. Some people need more cushioning. Some people need more of a drop. What I always suggest is size up, even half a size, again, if you're running, because as you run, your feet are going to swell a little bit more too. And when you push off with all your weight, your feet actually splays out a little bit more. So we just want to avoid the top of your nails hitting the top of your shoes, and sometimes sizing up could help with that. And then you could manipulate and change up the lacing techniques to get your foot to feel nice and snug. Pretty much when you buy a pair of shoes, it should feel comfortable right away. There shouldn't be a break-in period. If it doesn't feel quite right or it's rubbing in a weird spot, you're probably going to get a blister, and that's not going to be fun. So just find the shoe that works for you. My favorite shoe of all time was the Asics Nimbus 18s. I bought 4 or 5 pairs of them when I found the shoe that I like, and every time they were on sale, I bought them. But they don't make them anymore. And I tried the Nimbus 19s and 20s and 21s and 22s, and they're not the same. So if you find a pair of shoes that you love, I can't stress it enough, stock up, especially if you feel like running is going to be a big sport of yours or a big part of your life, or if you want to increase your mileage. Again, we could chat about getting expensive here, but different kinds of socks. There's running socks specifically with helps with moisture wicking. Some have like copper, silver built in, so it's anti-stink. Some are a double layer to prevent blisters and chafing and things like that. So I won't go into details of that. If you have any questions, obviously, you could message any of us. And it's also in here. But I do want to talk a little bit about weather, because we're coming up into the summer months, and running in the heat could be a thing. So just being mindful of that, dressing appropriately for the weather, knowing your signs of heat exhaustion, heat stress, having hydration with you, so bringing water bottles with you along the route. I put Humidex temperature ratings. When I'm running, my rule of thumb with myself is I always add 10 degrees. It just seems to work with me. So if it's 15 degrees outside when I'm running, for me, it's going to feel more or less like 25 degrees. So then I wear what I would typically wear for 25 degrees. It seems to work. Wind is a big factor sometimes, but more or less that works like a charm. Some tips for running, and then in cold weather, again, if you're going to be an outdoor runner, I am not. I'm at the track all winter long, but there's just some tips in here for cold weather running. Air quality, coming up to grass fire season. I do have asthma, so I can't really run. I find if the air quality is 5 or less, I'm fine. So for our group runs, if the air quality is sometimes 4 to 6, it's okay for the general population. I probably won't be able to, just because it exacerbates my asthma quite a bit. So just keeping that in mind, if I do have to cancel, or maybe Tracy could show up, or we have Faye who's also going to come probably every other week or so. So I may not always be there depending on the air quality, but just keeping that in mind, what's healthy, what's a good range, what's not, because it is pretty prominent here at the grass fires. And I won't go too much into all this, but common running injuries, and this is where it's formatted weird in your book, but it's just some common running injuries that you see, signs and symptoms, what you could do. So I just wanted to touch on that. Did anybody have any questions about the manual before I kind of wrap a few things up? All right, I'll take that as a sign. I also quickly, I just wanted to show you this. I just sent this to you via email today. It's just a little reflection tool that you could print out. I thought about it after I printed your manuals. So it's just an extra point you could have, and you could keep it on, you know, your fridge or your kitchen counter. So every time you do a run, you could input any of the data that you have. I really like this. If you have like a Fitbit or a Garmin or any smartwatch, you could usually set it to a run and then get all that information. If you don't have that and you want that information, you could use the Strava app. I really like it for just staying connected with each other. It's essentially the social media of the, you know, activity running world. You could like each other's posts. You could keep each other motivated. So if you have Strava, we could all follow each other, and your activities could actually be uploaded there too. But if not, you could always just manually input it there. And I want you to think about, after every run, what went well in your run. I don't want you to think of what part sucked, because that's not going to develop a positive relationship with running. I want you to think of what went well. You know what? When I slowed down, I enjoyed it a lot more. My heart rate felt better. I felt good when I was running. I felt by the 4th interval, I was feeling fantastic. I started to tune into my body. What did you learn? Well, I know not to push it so hard off the hop next time. I know to slow down my pace. Little things like that. And then how hard was it subjectively? 10 is send me to the hospital, this isn't good. 0 is I'm laying in bed doing nothing. So there's just that for every run for the 12 weeks. So you can keep track and look at your trends over time. For the group runs itself, again, I'm planning at Bevins at 7 o'clock on Wednesdays. And I'm thinking, if you guys know Bevins area, on 8th Avenue, there's a lot of parking out front there, and maybe meeting by, I think there's like, what do you call it? Where you get your mailbox, whatever it's called. I think that might be a good kind of open area where we could all connect 6 feet apart. And it's just a lot of good parking there. And then that way we could kind of loop around the pond, and I could always kind of run and chase you guys. It's a little nicer. There's porta potties around if you need. So I think about meeting there at 7 o'clock on Wednesdays, if that works for you guys. And yeah, after you've done your runs, because you're responsible for your other ones, I do tag me, text me, how did it go? Post it in the Wainwright Runners. You could take a selfie and be like, hey, I just did week 1, run 1, felt pretty good. Or maybe it'll feel better next week. Whatever it may be, just staying connected helps with that accountability. Again, if you're on Strava, or you could get Strava, we could keep each other connected that way. Again, I know some of you are out of town and won't be making it to the group runs, but it's just a way to stay motivated and connected when you see what everybody else is doing. So yeah, if you sign up for if you go on Wainwright Runners on the Facebook group, you could put a post there. We love seeing that stuff. So anything else, do you think? You guys have questions? I feel like I talked your ears off. All right, okay. Well, if nobody has any questions for me, I think I covered everything. If didn't, I'll probably just send another mass email. Yeah, you have my number. I want you to stay on top of it, stay in contact with me. Do your first run on your own, maybe Sunday or Monday, trial it out, do your warm-up, do your run, and then we'll chat about it on Wednesday when we're all warming up together for a group run.
Natalie, the next Wednesday is the 1st of July. I don't know if that's on your radar. I know it's not really it is a holiday, but.
Oh, I guess I'm kicking around. I'm doing nothing. Obviously you have lives. I guess technically it is a stat, but I'll be there.
Well, I don't think there's going to be much to do because.
Well, everything's canceled, right? So.
It's the first time I haven't worked on Canada Day in 10 years.
Especially on base too. So if you're bored and you're free on that Wednesday, even though it's Canada Day, I'll be in Bevins, and whoever comes, great. The more the merrier. And that's what we're hoping for. And any other Wainwright runners that are out there, feel free to come join. I guess we're technically allowed up to 50 people outside. So Stay 6 feet apart. I guess we can't high five after either, which I would love to do, but yeah. Perfect. So if nobody has any questions, I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks for coming on and taking the time while I figure out the Zoom and how this all works. And perfect. Okay, well, good luck everybody on your first run. I'm so pumped. Post about it. I want to see it. Yeah, and then I'll see you guys on Wednesday, whoever could make it for the group runs. Oh, thanks, Helen. And we'll see everybody later. Have a good night.
Glass pet. Oh, I want to see. All right, I'll bring the class pet. Hi.
Oh, hey. How are you?
Good.
Good. How was your day?
She's been asking for the last hour if she could say hi to you guys. Like,
Oh, obviously. I work with your mom.
Is that all you wanted to say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Bye. Bye.
I'll see you later.
Okay,
She's so
see
cute.
ya.
She's so cute. Okay, see you,
She kept
everyone.
taking this and going like, hello.
Oh,
hello.
did she? Oh.
She can't hear you. Okay, see ya.
Adorable.
Okay, bye.
See ya.